There are stories that sparkle briefly and fade like shooting stars. And then there are those rare ones that stay in the night sky, burning, unshakable, immortal. The story of Xiao Zhan and Wang Yibo belongs to the latter. It's not just a tale of fame or friendship. It's the legend of two souls whose destinies collided under the watchful gaze of the stars, a collision that changed the very atmosphere of their world. It began one quiet night, beneath a restless sky heavy with unshed rain. The film set was silent, the crew gone, and the city below hummed like a sleeping beast. Xiao Zhan lingered near the edge of the rooftop, looking out at the skyline. His thoughts were a whirlpool, dreams, fears, the weight of fame, the ache of loneliness that even applause couldn't drown. Behind him, a voice cut through the quiet, smooth and calm, like silk brushing against stone. "You still don't like endings, do you?" Xiao Zhan turned. Wang Yibo stood there, half in shadow, the wind playing with his hair. His eyes, sharp and unreadable, reflected the city lights like broken mirrors. "Maybe," Xiao Zhan said softly. "Maybe I just don't believe in them." A smile flickered across Wang Yibo's lips. "Good," he replied. "Because some stories aren't meant to end." That was the moment everything shifted, the spark that reignited a connection forged years ago on a set that had already become legend. When they first met, they were two actors thrown together in a fantasy world of swords and shadows, unaware that their on-screen bond would transcend fiction. But now, years later, standing under a moon that seemed to recognize them, the stars above whispered their names once more. The world had changed. Fame had carved scars, time had built walls, and silence had spoken louder than words. Yet somehow, fate found its way back to them. The next day they met again, not as co-stars, but as two souls standing at the edge of something deeper. A new project was in the air, one that would bring them together again. The rumors had already begun to stir online, like embers catching wind. Xiao Zhan and Wang Yibo, together again? The studio lights burned bright that day. Cameras clicked. The air was electric. When they entered the press hall, side by side, it felt as if the entire universe leaned in to watch. The crowd went silent, and for a fleeting second, time itself paused. Xiao Zhan's gaze met Wang Yibo's, and in that unspoken exchange, 1,000 stories unfolded, ones that no reporter could ever capture, no lens could ever see. But behind the glimmer of flashbulbs and the roar of fans, something else stirred, a memory. A late-night rehearsal years ago. Storm outside. A moment when their laughter filled the room as the power went out, leaving them in complete darkness. "Do you think the stars are watching us?" Xiao Zhan had asked back then, half joking, half serious. Wang Yibo had tilted his head toward the window, his face barely visible in the lightning's glow. "Maybe they're whispering," he'd said quietly. "Maybe they already know our names." Those words had become a secret echo between them, something neither had ever mentioned again. Till now. The filming for their new project began in a remote mountain town, far away from the chaos of cities and the flashing cameras. The air there was different, clean, cold, almost sacred. It was said that at night, the stars burned so bright they seemed close enough to touch. One evening, after a long day of shooting, Xiao Zhan found himself unable to sleep. He wandered outside, where the night was alive with silence. The sky above was a sea of glittering fire. He looked up, lost in thought. And then footsteps, soft, deliberate. Wang Yibo appeared, holding 2 cups of hot tea. "You really don't sleep much, do you?" he said with that same teasing tone, offering 1 cup. "Neither do you," Xiao Zhan countered, taking it. They stood there for a while, side by side, saying nothing. The quiet between them wasn't empty. It was full, heavy with everything they didn't need to explain. The stars shimmered like ancient witnesses, and for a brief, perfect moment, it felt as though the universe itself exhaled. "Do you remember what you said years ago?" Xiao Zhan finally asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Wang Yibo looked up. "About what?" "That maybe the stars already know our names." A faint smile curved Yibo's lips. "I was right, wasn't I?" The breeze carried his words into the dark. The world around them seemed to fade, leaving only the glow of the stars and two figures standing beneath them. Two destinies intertwined by light, shadow, and something that refused to be named. As the days passed, something strange began to happen. The chemistry between them, so effortless, so magnetic, wasn't just acting anymore. The director would call cut. But the emotions lingered, real and raw. Their scenes felt alive, as if the script was merely catching up to something already written in the constellations above. One night, a storm rolled in over the mountains. The power went out again just like before. Rain lashed the windows, and the crew scrambled to secure equipment. Amid the chaos, Xiao Zhan and Wang Yibo found themselves in the same room, alone, lightning flashing through the open shutters. Yibo's face was half lit by the flickering light, and for a moment, he didn't look like an actor or a superstar. He looked human, tired, fierce, and undeniably real. "Everything repeats," Xiao Zhan murmured, watching the rain. "Not everything," Yibo said. "Some things find a way to become new again." Thunder cracked, shaking the walls. Their eyes met, and the air between them felt alive, charged with something that words couldn't describe. When the storm finally passed, the first rays of dawn painted the sky gold. They stood together at the balcony, drenched but unbroken, watching the horizon. "It's strange," Xiao Zhan said softly. "Every time we find our way back, it feels like we never really left." "Maybe that's because we didn't," Wang Yibo replied. "Some stories just go quiet for a while." Those words lingered long after the project ended. The film became a phenomenon, praised for its emotion, its authenticity, its magic. But what the world didn't know was that behind every scene was something real. Two souls rediscovering what it meant to be understood without explanation. As months turned into years, the legend of their connection only grew. Fans called it destiny, others called it fate. But perhaps it was simply the universe whispering again, reminding the world that some names are meant to echo together. And so, every time they appear on stage, every time they share a glance during an interview or a quiet smile in passing, the audience feels it. The unspoken bond, the celestial thread that ties them to something greater. Because when Xiao Zhan and Wang Yibo stand beneath the same sky, it's as if the stars themselves remember. They whisper softly, endlessly, carrying their names across galaxies and into eternity. And if you listen closely, on nights when the world is still enough, you might hear it too. The whisper of the stars calling out their names, over and over again. Theirs is not just a story of fame or friendship, it's a story of destiny written in starlight. A reminder that some connections cannot be broken, no matter how much time passes or how far apart two souls may drift. Because when the universe decides to bind two names together, it does so forever. The wind carried the scent of rain that night, soft and cold, brushing against Xiao Zhan's face like a memory he couldn't let go of. The world around him was asleep, but his heart wasn't. The stars above burned brighter than usual, as if they, too, were waiting for something. He stood on that same rooftop, high above the city, where everything had begun. The lights below shimmered like a galaxy of their own, but even their brilliance couldn't compare to what he felt when Wang Yibo's voice broke the silence again. "You always end up here," Yibo said quietly, stepping into the moonlight. "As if the stars will give you answers." Xiao Zhan didn't turn around. "Maybe they already have," he murmured. "Maybe they've been whispering and we just weren't listening." The quiet stretched between them, thick with years of unspoken words. Yibo's eyes softened as he took a step closer. He had always been like this, still on the outside but burning inside. The kind of person who could say everything without uttering a single word. When Xiao Zhan finally turned, their gazes locked, and in that moment, the world seemed to fall away. The city faded. The stars pulsed brighter. Two souls, standing on opposite sides of destiny, finally aligned. They didn't speak again that night, not in words. But the silence between them told a story older than time. The next morning, sunlight poured through the windows like spilled gold. The set was alive again. Crews shouting, cameras flashing, scripts being flipped through, but Xiao Zhan's thoughts were elsewhere. He could still feel the echo of last night, like a heartbeat beneath his skin. During filming, the director called for a retake of a particularly emotional scene, a confrontation between two characters torn apart by fate. Xiao Zhan stood across from Wang Yibo, the script forgotten in his hands. The moment the cameras rolled, reality dissolved. Their eyes met, and something electric passed between them. It wasn't acting anymore. It was memory, pain, understanding. Every unspoken word from their past came flooding back. "You left," Xiao Zhan's voice trembled, half in character, half real. "And you waited," Wang Yibo replied, his own tone breaking on the edge of truth. The director didn't cut. He didn't have to. The scene carried itself, raw and powerful, as if it had written itself through them. When it finally ended, the entire set was silent. No one dared move or breathe. Even the air seemed charged with emotion. Later, when everyone dispersed, Wang Yibo found Xiao Zhan sitting on the floor in one of the empty corridors, staring at the walls plastered with old movie posters. He walked over quietly and sat beside him. "You really gave everything in that scene," Yibo said. Xiao Zhan smiled faintly. "That wasn't just a scene." "I know," Yibo replied. "It never is with us." For a long moment, they sat together in comfortable silence. The walls seemed to hum with the echoes of their laughter from years ago, from the days when everything was simpler, when they were just two young dreamers chasing starlight. That night, as the crew packed up, they stayed behind again. The stars were out, burning like diamonds scattered across the velvet sky. "Do you ever think," Xiao Zhan asked softly, "that maybe the stars connect us somehow? Even when we're apart?" Wang Yibo leaned against the railing, eyes lifted upward. "I don't think they connect us," he said, pausing. "I think they are us. Pieces of us, scattered across time." His words lingered in the air like magic. Xiao Zhan looked up too, and for the first time in a long while he smiled. Not the practiced smile of a celebrity, but something real, gentle and alive. Then came the night of the final shoot. The scene they had to film was poetic, a symbolic reunion between two characters separated by fate, who finally find each other beneath the stars. The air was cold, the wind restless, and the moon hung like a silent witness above them. As the cameras rolled, Wang Yibo reached out his hand, the scene unfolding with heart-stopping grace. "Do you hear it?" Xiao Zhan whispered, perfectly in character. "Hear what?" Bo asked. "The stars," Xiao Zhan said. "They're whispering again." And as he spoke, a sudden breeze swept through the set, scattering petals from the nearby trees. It wasn't planned, it wasn't even part of the script, but it felt like the universe itself was responding, confirming their every word. When the director finally called cut, no one moved. The air was heavy with something indescribable, like standing inside a heartbeat. Then quietly, Wang Yibo looked at Xiao Zhan and said, "Maybe they never stopped whispering our names." That line wasn't in the script either, but it stayed. Because everyone on that set knew it wasn't fiction. It was truth disguised as art. After filming wrapped, they stood together one last time beneath that vast, glittering sky. Neither spoke, but the silence said everything. The world below might forget moments, but the stars remember. And somewhere in that shimmering expanse above them, their names burned a little brighter. Eternal, intertwined, unstoppable. When the interviews began to circulate, fans noticed it immediately. The way they looked at each other, the laughter they shared, the warmth in every gesture. It wasn't just nostalgia. It was something deeper, something timeless. Because no matter how much the world tried to define them, their story refused to be contained. It wasn't about fame or fiction. It was about connection, destiny, and the beautiful chaos of finding someone who mirrors your soul. So when people asked, "What makes them so special?" the answer was simple. The stars whispered their names. And they listened. Even now, when Xiao Zhan stands beneath the night sky after another long day, he sometimes hears it again. The soft hum of the universe calling, the echo of a bond that defies distance and time. And somewhere out there, Wang Yibo is probably hearing it too. Because when two souls are written into the same constellation, no matter how far they drift, the stars will always find a way to bring them back together. And maybe, just maybe, that's what forever really means. Sparkles, sparkles, sparkles. If you felt the magic in this story, don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe to our channel. Glowing star, your support keeps the stars whispering and helps us bring you more breathtaking stories about Xiao Zhan and Wang Yibo.